A very good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking time to come to the Art and AI in Conversation events we're running today. My name is Rupert Thompson, and I'll be your MC for the day. The Civic District Alliance presents an inaugural series of panels and sessions introducing the world of art and artificial intelligence and where they come together. Our first session of the day, Living with AI, introduces us to the world of artificial intelligence. With its proliferation drawing much attention and debate over recent years, what are some of the surprising ways that AI manifests in our daily lives? We've got a really distinguished panel for you here today. Lawrence Liu, Director of Innovation at AI Singapore. Kevin Lim, Deputy Director of Co-LabX and Y-Lab at the National Gallery of Singapore. And Eugene So, founder of Do.sg and Mind Palace. We're also delighted to have Un Xuan here serving as moderator for us. She's an actress and very active across the arts sector here in Singapore. So please join me in welcoming our panel, and I look forward to seeing you after the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rupert. Hello, everyone. So good to see you all today. I hear it's raining outside. You guys still got here? Everyone managed to dry off? You comfortable? Yes? Okay, great. Okay, so let's just start with a quick introduction of our panel. Let's get you guys to introduce yourselves.
Sure, thanks. Hi, my name is Kevin. As you heard, I work at the gallery, which is just across the street. And over there, we are trying to think about the future of museums, which is why we do the work we do. So yeah, it's pretty exciting and really delighted to be here at the Art and AI panel.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, wait, so this is Dr. Kevin Lim, by the way.
Okay.
So what is your doctorate in?
I did my doctorate in communication theory. Yeah, so I was, my dissertation was on the Great Firewall of China. I was very interested in understanding society and technological adoption, which is what I'll be kind of covering in this segment of Art and AI.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear about it.
Thank you.
All right, and how about Eugene?
So I'm Eugene So. I run two companies. One of them is a non-profit. So the for-profit one is Do.sg. This is the shirt I'm wearing. Recently we've been doing lots of Instagram filters. One of the first in Asia to publish the Instagram filters. And then the second one is a non-profit. It started out with virtual reality for people living with dementia. Then now we have built immersive rooms instead for the elderly in general in nursing homes.
Nice. He's also known as the tech artist. So technology and art for him, all the same, right?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. And Lawrence, yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Lawrence. I'm the Director for Innovations in AI Singapore. AI Singapore is a government-funded program office to promote the use of AI by organizations, companies, and also to make sure that every Singaporean is aware of AI and know how AI can impact them in their lives.
And Lawrence is also a visionary technopreneur. So he has been one of the earliest in getting enterprises to adopt new technologies. So for example, cloud, and then after the analytics, and currently AI. All right, so we have a distinguished panel here with us today. So let's just do a quick fire round and maybe share with us, with your powers combined, how we see AI in our everyday lives. Maybe we start here and then we just go down and then go around a few times.
Sure, hi. We were having a back of house chat a few days ago, and it's endless, right? There's actually AI in everything that we feel and touch today. Maybe what I can do is I can show an example of what I mean. So what we're going to show is the Gartner's technology adoption curve, as you've seen here. I think one of the reasons why you could be here today is because you're probably very curious, and some of you might even be worried about what AI can do. But I must tell you that in terms of technology adoption, especially for new technologies, there's a human trend, there's a kind of societal trend around how things get adopted. And this curve behind you is based on a lot of different academic research, and what this business consulting firm has done is to apply it into a kind of generalized curve to see how many years ahead before something becomes stable or accepted in society to be used. So later on, the rest of the panel will talk about how it's applied, but I just want to share with you that there's nothing wrong with being scared, okay? When the first airplane was built, who would imagine being flung up like 20, 30,000 feet in the air and suspended by two metal wings and stuff like that. There's always going to be this level of fear. And it will just take us time to get through the chaos to come to this realization, and this is the funny part about this curve, where we all go through a state of depression, where we realize, hey, it's not actually that great after all, right? But after that, then that's where the really sane stuff gets built up. Like electric cars are now becoming the norm. It was hyped up, then it fell through the state of depression in a way. People were like giving it up, saying it's too expensive. But now we've found a sustainable state. So same for AI. And for AI, because a lot of these big technological themes, it can be broken up into sub-themes within the AI field. So some parts of AI are moving faster than others. But in general, we're all going through this flux, what I call the roller coaster ride in society. So it's just a norm, okay? And today, part of this panel is to try and uncover where are we on this curve and how is it specifically applied to art. So in the next slide, I just want to show you that where I come from, especially at the gallery, we're very interested in understanding how art could be applied, AI could be applied to art, and vice versa actually, because we work with academics and artists alike, and we see the museum as a platform for necessary conversations. So in this case, I just want to give you an example here, which the rest will have their own examples. This work that you see behind me is actually a motion-based video work that was projected on the facade of National Gallery Singapore. And the artist that did this was very interesting. Her name is Jo Ho. If you look on Instagram, it's Chili Sweets or something like that. And what will happen is she came back to Singapore after many years abroad. I'm sure some of you here might have lived abroad and come back and realized that, yeah, it's the same air, but it smells different, or it's the same kopitiam, but the tea tastes a bit different. And that was the premise of her work. So she used AI to generate an abstracted view of Singapore from an AI's point of view. Because what AI does is there's one feature which some of us will talk about later. It's called GAN, which is Generative Adversarial Networks. And she used that not to seek perfection, because in some cases it's used for creating deep fakes and all that. But she used that to create abstractions of images of Singapore. And it's through the abstractions that you start to realize that the machine was trying to imagine what the abstract of Singapore is, what home feels like home, feels same, but it's actually different. She was trying to bring out that flavor, and that was projected on the facade. And it was a very, I would say, tangential use of AI. And that's what I love about working with artists, that they apply tools in very subversive ways. So this is the exciting part about working with artists. They will use things in ways that we might not normally imagine, the most uneconomical way, the most inefficient way, but it does trigger something in us. Yeah.
It makes us think.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe just to round off my early part here, what she's doing is not inaccessible to all of you. In the next slide, you will actually see that there is actually a lot of resources online for anybody to get cracking. There are AI tools that you can use to be applied to generate your own art as well. So you don't have to learn coding and all that. We are reaching this era called the low-code era, where a lot of the heavy programming is turned into object-oriented, almost like Lego bricks, and you just assemble the logic together, and you can almost create your own AI art in a way already. So I'm oversimplifying it, but that's kind of how it works. Just want to demystify it a little bit.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so that website, that's where people can go to check it out?
Yeah,
All
you can
right.
go to the website or just Google for AI art tools and things like that.
AI
You'll find a
art
lot of
tools.
it. Yeah. And there are a lot of open source tools you can play with.
Great, thank you. All right, Lawrence, so give us an example of AI and also what is AI?
Sure. Maybe I'll get the audience to participate, right? Can everyone just raise up their hands first? If I ask you questions and you ask you to raise your hands, it's not going to happen. But everyone raise up their hands first.
This is
Okay,
a good trick. I am going
this
to
is
keep
easier.
this.
You have to raise up your hands, right? Okay. Now, I'm going to ask a few questions, and how many of you actually use your phone to take a picture and you like that blurry image in the background? If you don't, you can put down your hands. Okay. How many of you actually talk to your phone to actually ask it to do certain things? You all don't? Hello, Google. Hey, Google. right? I heard. Okay, we sound alike. Okay, so actually these are all, okay, thank you for, if you turn around, I mean, I think we have half the audience here with their hands up. AI is actually already everywhere, and you're already using it every day, okay? It already exists in phones, and just now we were just talking about, it also exists in your fridge, your washing machine, and when did AI get into washing machine?
Yes.
1980s. When I was a kid, my grandmother bought this Sanyo washing machine. It has fuzzy logic washing machine. So AI is not new. It's been around for a long time, since the 1940s, actually. So today, yes, it has progressed a lot. But fundamentally, it is still just maths, right? There's no magic to it. And the maths, what I like to tell my audience is, if you have secondary school level maths, you can actually understand the fundamentals of how, like what Kevin said, the GANs and so on, those advanced neural nets. If you have secondary school level maths, more or less fundamentally, it applies the same principles. So it's not very difficult to understand at a very high level how this sort of AI system works. And because it is just maths, it's not going to become this super intelligent being that will take over the world. That's my belief.
Thank you. Okay, I got a question with the washing machine. Do you mind elaborating a little bit how AI is used in those 1980s washing machines?
Well, I mean, we humans operate on rules, right? If your clothes is very dirty, wash a bit longer, or you put in a bit more soap. So for those washing machines, depending on the model, right, you put your soap, and then the inverted commas, the AI system will detect how dirty the water is, maybe during the first spin. And then it will say, okay, I think it needs a bit more soap. Then it will dispense more soap. Or it's still not clean enough, they'll go for another cycles. That's it.
That's really cool. I didn't realize so much was happening inside the washing machine. All right, thank you so much, Lawrence. Actually, so just now, Kevin talked about how people get quite scared when they hear about AI, and Lawrence, you just said it's not going to take over the world. I just want to get a sense of the room here. I'm going to use your trick. Everybody raise your hands. All right, so when you think about AI, do you feel a sense of fear or excitement? So if you feel a sense of fear, leave your hand up. Oh, so almost everyone in this room is really excited about AI. Interesting. All right. I guess that's why you signed up for this talk as well. All right. So now let's go to Eugene. Eugene, what is AI?
How I use it is very directly. Everyone's phones has the power to use AI already. One of them is facial recognition. I got an example with some of the Instagram filters I made. Yeah, that one.
That's awesome.
So this is an example of an Instagram filter. Is it gonna play? So I've become Chiobu here. This I made for Halloween. So all the touch up and there's makeup. Yes, this is why it's for Halloween. It is there's instructions on the screen to let people like open their mouth, and then when they open their mouth, they can shock their friends with this one. So there's a few sets of clothes in this one. Quite an elaborate filter that I made. So if you go to the next slide, I also brought the Instagram filters. They primarily exist only on the internet. They only are supposed to exist on Instagram. But because I'm an artist and I do exhibitions, I brought it to my 4th solo show, which was recently at Art Week this year, in a container in front of Mandarin Gallery. So people go inside these containers, and then they stand in front of a TV. They will see a reflection of themselves in this. If you play that video, it is what they will see. So I wanted to create this like meditative reflective space in the middle of Orchard Road, and it got quite a number of people coming in. And during the COVID restrictions, we could only let a few people in at a time, so it was quite nice. It's quite nice. This is my direct use of AI, and you guys can use it by going to my Instagram at dude.sg to go and check out some of the filters.
That filter is so cool. It kind of creates a cocoon around your head, and then with that sound. Actually, so can I find out what was your first introduction to AI?
My first introduction was I was testing the GAN system, the one where, what does it stand for?
Generative.
Generative, yeah. So like I did the tutorial that everybody goes through, like create your own Pokemon. So it would learn what a Pokemon is. Like you feed it all the Pokemon images, and then once it has learned all these images, then another program starts to generate random images at it, and then to like kind of generate its own passable image that passes as a Pokemon. So that kind of thing took my computer several days to process. Like and a few days later, I looking at the images, it's still like blobby stuff, and my whole room was heating up already. So that is the computing of today. But next time, with the super quantum computers, this kind of process could probably take a few seconds. Yeah.
A few seconds?
Yeah, a few seconds probably. Quantum computers. Yeah.
That's incredible. So then what do you think is next for AI? What kind of creations are we looking at? What kind of developments are we looking at?
The kind of tools that for AI, for the image recognition, we're gonna see like those filters which are kind of trivial, but then there's also what fuels AI is data, and that's also what people use with the data is quite scary to me, because there are big corporations who have access to all this data, and because data is the new oil, when they use it in the correct way, it's actually very, very useful or very, very dangerous.
Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Ooh, yeah. So like, wow. So they could, for example, you pass them. Google has access to all of your like Google Drive and stuff like that, so they can take a look at everything, and they can like recognize faces and tell you, oh, this is your wife, this is your whoever. But these photos are inherently supposed to be private also. Is Google supposed to be even looking at them, even if they are supposed to like tell you, oh, this is your wife, and then they group all the photos together.
But and then at the same time, they wouldn't be able to develop it as fast if they didn't have access to all of these things. But then we kind of didn't really give permission.
We didn't really give permission, but everybody's gonna say, oh, you click this terms and conditions thing that nobody reads. So that's a bit sneaky of them.
It is a little bit, isn't it? It is. Okay, so Kevin, what was your first interaction with AI?
So like Lawrence said, this is going to reveal my age, but back then I was very intrigued with ELIZA. Actually, my interest in AI is not in like how sophisticated it is, but how low tech it can get to give you the illusion of sentience. So ELIZA was a good example, because the strategy in ELIZA was that it used a series of code that simply keeps insulting you so that it distracts you. And in a way, when you ask or talk to it about anything, the personal attacks to you kind of make you kind of forget what you kind of asked about. So funny enough, now at the gallery, for instance, we've been developing different chatbots because we believe conversational AI to be the future. It's a bit like some of you will probably know in Iron Man as Jarvis, right? We do believe in that future where, especially COVID now, it's contactless. Whatever you want, you could just vocalize it and it could happen. So we're trying to build that. We've got prototypes all built up. And till today, what ELIZA has taught me is that there are different tips and tricks that you can pull off to make a system look clever. And they are not sophisticated at all. So these are what we call in our tech space, we call it fallbacks. When a bot can't answer you correctly, there are then these tricks that we pull out of the bag to try and distract you, tell a joke or something. So these are also part of the conversational strategies that are deployed. So yeah, it was Eliza that inspired me because it taught me that you don't have to be super sophisticated to pull off really cool stuff. It's kind of like what Andy Warhol said of art. It's what you can get away with. Yeah, so...
Okay, wait, sorry. So to get this right, Eliza does its thing, and then once Eliza gets stumped, it just throws in a joke.
Or it insults you.
Or insults you.
It asks you for your name first. So it remembers that. And that was the critical part because then it becomes more personal. So there are all these tips and tricks in how to manipulate human beings.
I am so curious. Why is there such a push in AI to become, I mean, not say push, I don't know if that's the right word, but why is there such a direction to become more human?
Yeah.
Right? Like from Eliza time, there's a sense of like wanting to connect with people, even though it's not really a human being. Why is that?
I think it's philosophical. I think some of us are talking Greek a bit when we were wondering why we love the things we do. We love to deconstruct things that we see in front of us, reconstruct them, make them better. It could be just a humankind endeavor to try and better ourselves and all that. So it's a hard question to answer, but it's just an inane kind of natural kind of instinct that human and society has, maybe to try and replicate itself to some extent. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
To replicate itself, right?
Yeah.
Lawrence, what was your first interaction with AI?
Like I say, right, when I was a kid with that smart washing machine,
machine,
right?
yes.
Yeah. But you know, what really got me interested was after undergrad studies was bumping around, and I say, hey, there's this hot thing called AI and neural nets that potentially could be used to predict the stock market. And as a fresh graduate, say I really don't want to work. I want to predict the stock market and retire by 30 years old. And so that's why I got into AI. Trying to build a neural net to understand enough about it to build and to try to beat the market. But no, it's not possible.
And then it started your entire journey with AI, and now getting enterprises to adopt it.
Yes.
So a question: when you bring this to businesses or getting people to take it on, and also you get students as young as 13 to actually learn how to use AI based on all this data that you've collected, is there a kind of general reaction to this that you would be able to share with us?
So in AI Singapore, we original goal, right, was to get companies to do AI, and we started with a few companies, but a lot of the SMEs and managers they basically said, well, I don't know about AI. Will it take over my job? I'm afraid of it. So there was a lot of misconception, and that's why conversations like this, is fantastic. So we created a AI for everyone, which is like a 3-hour session, and I basically did this for 2 years, a Friday and a Saturday, twice a month, in an auditorium that is depending, right? Some days I get this size, some days I get 5 times the size of this auditorium. And we just went and tried to educate people what is AI. And today I think we have reached nearly 15,000 Singaporeans through that effort. We have also started engaging the schools and the kids. So we have more than 20,000 secondary school students have gone through our AI for Students. And in fact, April, MOE is going to put our AI for Everyone onto the Students Learning platform, which means all students in the government MOE-funded schools will learn about AI. So my goal is to make sure that every Singaporean kids that graduate from whether it's O-levels, Poly, ITE, and so on, at least have some understanding of AI, right? So that's one objective that we hope to.
Why is that so important to you? Why is that so important?
Why is that so important?
Is it because AI can bring immense benefits, or
no? It's actually not about AI, right?
Okay.
It's that technology being data aware is something that is super important as Singapore moves forward in society, in the world, to compete and so on. We need each and every citizen to be data aware, to be aware of AI. I'm not saying everyone needs to code, don't get me wrong. I don't believe that everyone needs to code. In fact, only a few people needs to code. Majority is you need to be a smart user of AI systems. And the reason why I'm so passionate about making sure that all our kids are is that we have lost, I think, a couple of generations of kids who were passionate about STEM, because all of them said, whoa, I want to study to become a business graduate. I go into finance, I make more money. Engineering, no fun. Computing, no fun. So, but fortunately, the last couple of years, computing science has now picked up again. And now it's super hard to get in. Everybody is excited. So not everybody can get into computer science in NUS. It's very hard to get in. It's great that computing science, engineering, and so on is become hot and sexy again. And I want to make sure that I can help accelerate that. We need to be a nation of data-savvy users.
Right. Data-savvy users. Eugene, can you relate to that term?
Yeah, to protect your own data. Don't.
How about in terms of using AI in your work? So learning how to use AI systems. You use that a lot in the work that you do, right? Could you share more?
I guess Instagram filters, the image recognition is done by Facebook. I guess they have seen enough pictures, that their AI has seen enough pictures of human faces to recognize a face quite well. Now it doesn't quite see a face when you put on a mask, so maybe that one can be further improved. But that's the job of Instagram to do that. Then we as the users, they made a kind of more simple software for us to use. There's still coding that you can choose not to use, but within a few clicks of a button, you could make your own Instagram filter. That's quite easy for a lot of people to do nowadays. If you want to do more advanced filters like the ones that I'm doing, then you need some coding, which I was, in my background is in computing, so I can code, and then I went to an art school, so it's kind of the best kind of medium for me, because I can code if I want to, and then I can express myself. So the medium of filters is quite perfect for me.
Right. And also the work that you do, Mind Palace, right? So Mind Palace is a social enterprise that brings VR technology into nursing homes, correct?
Yes. So now it is it started out with virtual reality goggles that they put on. So we will bring the goggles to the nursing home. We can actually bring this one up. This one we use virtual reality and work with Hawker Chan, our Michelin star chicken rice man. We film him making the chicken rice and presenting it to the camera as if it's the auntie and uncle inside the nursing home. So when they are watching it, they can smell the chicken rice also. They can see him making the chicken rice and they can smell it, but they don't know why they can smell the chicken rice. They thought the technology is so good, but it's actually because Hawker Chan sponsors these sessions with like 40 packs of chicken rice, and then we hide it in one corner first. Then when they put it on, they watch him make the chicken rice. Then they sneak one plate in front of them. Then they can smell it. Then when they take it off, they can straight away eat the chicken rice. And so it's as if Hawker Chan has individually, personally made a plate of chicken rice for them. So that kind of experience, we found that it was more memorable because I'm guessing it's because it engaged all the senses. Like the next week I went back there, they asked me like, hey, today got chicken rice or not? Previously, right, there will be...
You're the chicken rice man now.
Yeah, I become a chicken rice man. Or whatever food. Previously, when I go back there, they will be like, looking at me as if they have never met me before. They'll be like, oh, 小弟,你叫什么名字?住哪里? They will ask me the same questions as if they have never met me.
That's asking, oh, little boy, where are you from? Where do you stay? Where's my chicken rice? No, they didn't say that. I added that in.
So after a while, I realized that the headsets, they were getting a bit gross because it's getting shared around. And then we tried to like use the antiseptic cream and everything. But even when I was updating the software and then putting it to my face, my eyebrows started to itch. So I think, wow, if my eyebrows started to itch, then I can't imagine all the elderly that we are going to try. So I ditched VR, and now we built, I was thinking of another solution, which was to build an immersive room, which is actually from the idea that I used for an installation at the National Gallery, which is still there, right?
What is it called?
The exhibition at the National
Yeah.
Gallery, it is the Aki Gallery,
Yeah, it's on the fifth floor. On the fifth floor of
the City Hall wing.
Yeah.
So with that one was one big projection, but in the nursing homes, we built this an immersive room. So all the walls, the idea is all the walls would have the projections, and they would be able to go into these virtual reality spaces without having to put on the goggles, just entering entering the room. And in these rooms, we also built games, some of them for them to exercise and play games with. The idea is to make them stronger, not to just keep fit. The mentality is that they can get stronger. So if they aim far for that to get stronger goal, even if they fall short, they keep fit. So that's the mentality that we are doing for this immersive room. I can imagine next time when it gets bigger. Now we are only at our third room, but I can imagine with the amount of data that we can collect, like the amount of exercise that they do, we can start to adjust remotely according to them. So now the data from these three rooms are quite small. I can look at them myself, but I can imagine if it gets to super widespread, like Malaysia also have this same immersive room, then we can start using AI to analyze the data. Otherwise, I can't go through it myself.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there and ask you to elaborate a little bit more. What do you mean, what data, and analyze what to do what?
Oh, so for example, one of our games is this exercise. I was actually quite surprised that the exercises that they do in the nursing home is to stand up and sit down.
Oh.
Stand up and sit down repeatedly. That's the group exercises that they do. So the level 1 of my photo pose game is to stand up and sit down. It is inspired by that Japanese game show where there's a wall coming towards you, and there's a silhouette of a cutout, and then you're supposed to match the silhouette, otherwise you get pushed into the water. So there is a silhouette coming towards you. If you have to match the sitting down pose, otherwise you lose. And then when it comes to you, you got to stand up. So that's level 1. Once they pass that, they will go to the next level where they do more elaborate, like maybe dabs. And then later on, hopefully some push-up poses, or if they can get that to that stage. So the data would be how fast they do it, and how well they can cope with it. And then probably the next level, it will adjust accordingly. If they are responding very fast, then it will make it slightly more difficult, faster. And then that is the localized data, which I haven't seen yet. So in the nursing home itself, within that computer, they can analyze. But once it's stored in a database and then sent to my server, I can see, okay, maybe this nursing home, they are doing very well, and in these games, then maybe we can remotely control them. Okay, change some values to suit them better, that kind of thing. Or for now, I would be the one manually adjusting it, but next time maybe an AI can do what I'm doing.
That is so cool. So first, you have this virtual reality that helps to engage these older folks to do exercises that would normally be very rote and actually very boring, and you make it fun for them. And then AI can make that process even more refined and almost customize it to what they need.
Yes.
That's incredible.
So that's also a bit of data privacy issues. Like we have to know that, okay, whatever exercise that they do, I can see it, the AI can see it. If the AI can see it, that means I can see it. So we gotta be very transparent there.
Right. Okay. So Kevin, for you for the artist, it's about using AI as a tool to create art. So could you share with us, maybe you shared about Johor earlier, maybe another piece that really spoke to you?
Oh, okay. There's quite a number. But I think the example of what Johor did was a good one. I can't At this point, I
Okay.
can't think of any others at this point.
No
but there
problem.
are quite a number that can be looked up online as well. Yeah. But maybe I can pick up where he
Yes.
left off. So when he applied the AI and he's looking at data from the nursing homes and using game mechanics to sort of motivate people to use these systems. Over at YLab, which is the more risk-taking branch of what the gallery is trying to do, we're looking at also how art could be applied in the medical field, because that's technically what he's also kind of exploring. Because we're also trying to figure out how to make the medical checks more interesting and also more accurate at the same time. So for instance, I won't go into too much detail about the startups, but the gist of it is that there are tools that we can use, like virtual reality, to try and have people play certain games in order to diagnose what potential diseases they might have, for example, for the eye and all that. Because right now, when you do eye checks, there could be just a normal eye chart and all that, but it's all you self-reporting, right?
Yeah.
But instead of self-reporting, if you played a game, you could kind of see from the score, the doctor could assess that, hey, actually, it looks like you're deficient in certain parts, and then from there diagnose. And that's where the game itself could tell and kind of use that data to elicit. But taking that one step level to what I discussed with Lawrence, in Singapore recently, you might have seen in a CNA, Channel News Asia, there's the medical field has all come together to work on this AI called Selena, I believe. Yeah. And I recently went through the whole process as well. To do eye checks, they do a sort of like a retina scan. They take a picture of your eyeball, and then they kind of just feed it to the computer to try and project what or set probability around what kind of potential eye diseases you might have just on your retina scan. Now, this whole process, the problem with this is that, in Singapore, we've got very high instances of eye diseases among Singaporeans, myopia and all that. And the current process is very one-to-one, which is not tenable. There's not enough doctors to go around. So this kind of approach allows the patient to scan the eye, go home, and then sort of like 2 weeks later, you get results. And what's very interesting from a data perspective is that most of the time when you deal with AI, the problem is what we call the black box effect. Okay. It's doing its job, but you actually don't know how it's arriving at a conclusion, right? So this is where they also work on this new trend, which is also on Gartner's chart, which is what we call explainable AI. The AI will start to break down why it thinks it's arriving at these conclusions. And so for Selena's case, when it shows you the retina scan, it actually marks the region where it's suspect. So in a way, it's prompting the doctor, the human doctor, to take a second look and realize, oh yeah, now that you pointed out, these are really what I agree with or disagree with. Now, where does art come in? I guess the art is really coming in to figure out as a medium to try and make the whole experience more polished in a way, and also figure out how to make some of these experiences much more refined and much more pleasant, just like what he was trying to do at the nursing homes. I won't say right now it might be superficially slapped on, but down the road there could be much more meaningful experiences with art that also happens to elicit out some of these diagnoses as well. So we're trying to look at these juxtapositions that could happen, and we're very early stages right now. Yeah.
And it sounds so exciting already.
Oh, it's okay, yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Lawrence, okay, so you get enterprises to take on AI and to use AI systems. Can you think of an instance where a company adopted it that was maybe moving or inspiring for you?
Yeah, so we have one startup that we supported, and what they did was to develop a computer vision application where they stuck a infrared camera onto a phone, and it allowed the patient or the nurse to take an infrared picture of a wound, and these are the long-term diabetic wound. Now, before that, when someone has one of those wounds, they have to go to the hospitals, every few days or every other week, and they just have to go because they themselves cannot diagnose whether the wound is getting better or not. So they need to go. Then the nurse will take a look at it, and the nurse may spend up to 30 minutes to determine whether the wound has improved or not. And if it has, great. The nurse just do a simple dressing change, and that's it. So it means 30 minutes of the nurse time. It means 2 to 3 hours of the patient's time. So now with this app, if the patient decides to buy that attachment and put on his mobile phone, he can take a snap of it at home, and immediately he can tell you your wound is getting better. You can just do the dressing change yourself at home that you have been taught. So it doesn't even need to go to the hospital at all. Now, assuming the patient doesn't have, he goes to the hospital. It used to take the nurse, like I said, 30 minutes. Now it takes the nurse less than 3 minutes to determine whether the wound has improved or not, and if it has not, where are the new pus that has been formed, and therefore just go straight in there and clean it with a lot less pain. So this is computer vision in action. The system is, I think, has been approved at our HSA, and it's already in trial deployments in 2 to 3 hospitals here in Singapore.
That's incredible. So time-saving and so accurate.
It's accurate enough. Yes.
Accurate enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Still learn. It will keep learning to be more and more accurate.
Yes.
So when you say computer vision, you're talking like this AI. See whether I get the terms right. This AI examines a lot of photos of all sorts of wounds, and then does what?
Yeah. So the way to train it is that, again, right, like AI is a big term, but actually it's quite simple in how an AI system is being trained. So we work with the startup. They provided like thousands and thousands of images of this sort of diabetic wound that already has a nurse or doctor has already marked out this area is a new pus, this is a pus, this is okay, and so on and so forth. So with that, let's say 10,000 images, we basically train an AI to recognize all these segments, parts of the image, like art, right? You want to know where is the bright spot, where is the dark spot, and so on and so forth. And after that, once the AI system has been trained, it's then being shown a new picture that has never seen before, and it will more or less guess from, because it has seen thousands of pictures, this is the area that is problematic, or this area are all okay, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your sharings. That was incredible. Let's give them all a round of applause. Okay, so now we have about 15 minutes left, and we would like to open the floor to see if you guys have any questions. If you have questions, you can go ahead, or maybe we can take a minute to have a think, digest everything that was just talked about, maybe do a Google search or something. I don't know. Completely up to you, and then we will start with the questions, okay? All right, so have a think. Your time starts now.
I'm curious what they're interested to know. Right, yeah. Maybe we could ask them, like, why you here?
We have a question. Okay, great.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the sharing, and it is very much appreciated. I see the title as Art and AI, and I know that this afternoon I was given a lot more than that. I learned about washing machine, I learned about going to the old folks' home, and I learned about what's happening at NGS. So it's very much appreciated. I'm trying to reconcile art and AI, because that's where we come here to consider. We know that from an art standpoint, the creative element is very, very strong. So whether you look at a Beethoven, whether you look at a Rembrandt, or whether you look at even a dancer like Margot Fontaine, these are art. The creative element is very, very strong. I would argue and ask the hypothesis, perhaps from the panel itself, if AI reconstruct, which is what you all mentioned, deconstruct, which is what you have also mentioned, wouldn't that then mean that AI is merely a set of algorithm? And if it is purely a set of algorithm, where is the creative element in creating and relating to art? So if that's something that the panel perhaps could throw lights upon, if that's the case, then the argument is that AI cannot be alive in art, and art perhaps can be alive in AI because art itself will help to design and redesign the next AI.
That is such a great question. Thank you very much. All right, who would like to take that?
Yeah, I think there was this incident where a group of artists used the same GAN AI to generate Renaissance-looking pictures, and then it's sold at Christie's auction for a lot. So, and then there was some controversy whether it is really that group that deserves the money, or is it the programmer who created the AI who deserves the money. In the end, I think the creator of the algorithm didn't get anything, and then the community was a bit unhappy that the art group took credit for everything without crediting that they used this software. I guess just to what he was saying, the creation of that work that sold was actually not just, it was marketed in a way that the AI did it all, but actually the group itself had to pick and choose the images, because the AI would generate a lot of nonsense pictures and some very nice ones. They still had to pick like the nice ones. So the act of picking is still the act of creativity. That's for me. So and then when it's sold at Christie's, it's also their creative choice to go and sell it there. So yeah, I think they still deserve the money, but they should at least credit the person who coded the software in the first place.
Maybe I'll take a stab. I think your point is something that our team also has been reflecting, this idea of who's really creating what. The agency, is it the artist that's really involved, or are we trying to give birth to an artificial artist in a way? And I can tell you that at this juncture, a lot of the works that we're seeing tends to be artists themselves using AI platforms as tools or canvas. So you're right to say that we're using it as the new paintbrush in a way, but it'll be exciting, but we are also unsure whether we'll reach a state where we can create a system that's self-aware enough that it can generate true creativity. Because you're right to say that a lot of what we've seen so far does require us to feed it with enough information in order to generate something. And even though it's generating something possibly new, it has its roots still back into its original corpus of things that we feed it with. So say, for example, at the gallery, we are actually building a test showcase where we work with Hong Kong University. We fed the machine, the GAN machine, with more than 1,000 images of orchids in an attempt to try and see what kind of variations of orchids it could generate that don't exist in real life, that yet could pass off as real when we show it to people. So this experiment also is just a case where is the agency, where is the creativity happening? Right now, when Eugene brought up this point that there's still human agency to still select, choose, and guide the system, I guess that part is still inevitable, that the machine, the tool, is still behaving like a tool. It's not deciding on our behalf. So that's one part of it. And then I thought to myself, what part how do we define then where's the artist playing the role? To me, I thought at first he has to be laboring at least more than 50% of the time. But when we look at artists of today also and the tools that they use, sometimes the labor is performed elsewhere, it's outsourced. And the artists themselves think of the concept itself, just the concept, the story, the narrative. And I thought if that's the case, yeah, the agency is in question, and it will continue to evolve even more as some of these AI tools start to get more advanced. It could be that children are just pushing buttons and generating stuff without being fully aware of what they're generating. And then it does bring back the question, where does that agency exist? Did it originally exist from the person who coded the software for the artist to generate? There's a lot of these questions that are to be unraveled.
The AI that you mentioned, rightly mentioned, it's just nothing more than algorithm or maths, okay? And I think when we talk about human or artist creativity, AI, there's no creativity. AI today is nothing more than a pattern recognition system. So to generate new songs or AI-generated songs, AI-generated pictures, like what Kevin Eugene spoke, they will still need to be fed the pictures and the songs done by humans. And then basically what they do is they just estimate and mix and match and come up with something in between. So is that creativity? I'm not sure.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Or does that give you more questions? Because that's a good thing too, because like this is such a huge topic and where it's headed, nobody really knows, right? I mean, you kind of get a guess. Laura's like, yeah, we know. All right, thank you so much. Do we have another question? Or even a comment, that's okay as well.
I think I better clarify just now that incident that I brought up. I think the software was a software that is used to scrape images off the internet. So like goes to Wikipedia and scrapes all the Renaissance painting, Renaissance works to feed it to the AI. I think, if I remember correctly, that was the software that the art group used and didn't credit the creator, if I'm not wrong. Just to be, because this is going to be on the internet forever, right? This video.
Actually, I have a question. So if they use the AI, I mean, the whole thing about the AI is a tool. So when you use a paintbrush, do you need to credit the person who created the paintbrush?
Oh yeah, that's also a good question. A few people have, Photoshop has this function to create a lens flare. So once you click, then a beautiful lens flare appears like from your eyes or what. So pretty much using AI to generate all this, very simplifying it is like, and then using that artwork to sell is like trying to sell the lens flare. Like you just click here, okay, then generated a random lens flare, and then you take that lens flare and you try to sell it. So, but I still think that there is a choice in which you like, if you want to sell that one lens flare that is generated by Photoshop, it's still your choice to go and try to put it in the art gallery. Like for example, those contemporary ones where they just cut the canvas with one cut and they put it out there. It's still a choice.
Yeah, correct. That is the tool of the artist, right?
Yes.
All right. Do we have any questions? Oh yes. Hi, Rupert.
I am just going to jump in with a question. I've been looking forward to this talk for a while now, and yeah, really grateful for all the sharings from the panelists. It's been really fascinating. Picking up on this sort of question and theme of art and AI, one of the things that's happening now alongside the swifter and swifter development of AI technology is increasing developments in terms of cognitive science as well, and we're learning very fast about how the human brain works and the systems that exist in terms of, the synapses that often operate in quite formulaic patterns too. And Lawrence, you're talking about pattern recognition being a fundamental part of how AI works, but we're also starting to see alongside that pattern recognition can be a really fundamental part of how humans appreciate art. So these works that seem to conjure the infinite and speak to our heart and our mind, they do so, but they're also triggering deep impulses, trained impulses within us that recognize patterns, and that causes the effect in us that feels totally spontaneous. So my question is just picking up on that last fascinating question about how AI and art relate, where the panel can see any potential confluence between those, that impression, I guess. Yes, which, Lawrence is saying very clearly AI is not going to become conscious itself. It's a form of maths. But what if AI is able to create things that speak to us as if they're utterly felt and real? And when might that come?
I think it's probably that when they generated the dead mothers, there was this experiment, I think from Korea, was it? That they use virtual reality and AI to recreate the dead mother to bring her back to life, so that the daughter could say goodbye to her mom, one last time, say hello or goodbye to her mom one last time. So as the creators of the work, we understand the magic. So it might not work on us, but for them, that emotion is real. So because maybe they don't quite understand the technology, and that's a blessing to them, that they can receive this kind of real closure from something that is fake. So I think if the emotion is real, then who's to say that it doesn't work?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, that's. I think it just came out a couple of weeks back. There was I don't know where, but now you can take very old photos, and the AI system can actually animate the photos. So that will generate a lot of emotions for people who have all these very old sentimental photos of parents or grandparents and so on. And all of a sudden you can see them smiling at you and so on. So that generates a lot of emotions from the user. But again, that is a software programmer, AI scientist that actually built that algorithm. AI didn't think of it, right? So to generate any emotions in someone, I think we still need artists that have the computer science background to actually think, hey, this will generate emotions. Let's build something to do that. AI is not going to be able to say, let's do it, because AI is not there. Like I say, it's just maths. It's just a bunch of numbers.
Actually, also, I mean, that kind of makes me think, in terms of when we feel emotions, a lot of it is really ourselves, right? Even when you look at a piece of art, it may not necessarily be what the artist had intended, but really what you are getting from it based on your experience and based on what you want to see also and your own projections, right? So yeah, that's really interesting that something that's generated by really a series of like equations and a series of patterns can provoke such strong reactions in us. And I guess also the fact that it sometimes feels like it does it on its own or is learning to do it better. And that is something that we do as well as humans, and we kind of humanize it in that sense. I don't know. What do you think, Kevin?
I think where Rupert was coming from is this idea of whether the machine was intentionally trying to come out with something moving, which I think the panel here currently agrees that would be very challenging, because it is a result of almost randomized behavior that somehow lands on one or two potential pieces. So my point to you is that, first of all, for an AI system to generate something meaningful for a user, it would have to understand what is meaningful. And that in itself is a huge challenge, because amongst ourselves sometimes it's even hard to understand each other already. But to its end, I think what both of them had given examples of are appliances of how we try to manufacture that emotion. So these, like I go back to my Eliza talk, these are all engineered instances where we're trying to trigger something, but to trigger it almost naturally, currently we don't currently see any way, unless the machine reaches sentience, which we haven't seen that occurrence yet. Yeah. So I hope that kind of answers. Yeah.
What would you do if it does reach sentience?
Wow, a lot of ethical issues already.
You want to elaborate a bit more?
Oh yeah, then if it reaches that stage, then do we give it a passport? Does it have its own IC? A lot of these questions. Then is it a real person?
I'm too much of an engineer to even think that will happen. No, it's not going to happen. As an engineer, it's not going to happen in my lifetime.
Not in our lifetime.
So, but let's hypothesize a little bit, because there was some AI scholars that were sharing recently and trying to explain to a layman what it means to reach that state, which currently we haven't known of any pathway to reach that stage yet. But if we do reach that stage, you got to think of it this way. I'm going to use a metaphor. So for instance, if our perceived reality as a human is compared to that of an ant, the ant would never understand some of the concepts that we're able to understand because of our consciousness and our field of vision, what we're able to manipulate, what we're able to see and do. So if a supercomputer were to, if an AI system were to be able to ingest all the information in the world, for instance, its level of consciousness would then render us to be like ants. Which is, that part is the part that Elon Musk and the rest are all concerned about, that at that point, we don't know what such sentient level consciousness would do to us. It could ignore us, just as how we ignore ants, you know, but it is a very, we can't even fathom that idea. Yeah.
I know what it will do first.
What?
It will figure out how to make sure that we humans cannot turn it off.
That's really scary. Because its goal is to survive, or to keep going, or to not
Yes.
stop. Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so any more questions? I think we have. Okay. I think we have time for one last one. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks so much for the sharing. So switching away from Skynet, perhaps the part I'm curious, besides the use of AI in the generation of art, which is kind of what we talked about, do you guys see other use cases of AI in the whole larger art ecosystem? Other use cases beyond generation of art and beyond Skynets? Thank you.
Okay, maybe I can help. I'll start off. I'll review a little bit of the framework, what we do at the gallery as a starting point. I must tell you, for art tech, which is what we're calling it, you know, as fintech, HR tech, in Southeast Asia, it's a fairly new thing. In the Western context, they've got a lot of what they call cultural innovation labs that they've built already. And there are many agendas around that, but we won't go into that. So in our space, what we're attempting to do at 3 levels. We are thinking of the art experience as is what we've been talking about, and not just the production of art, but more of the interpretation and appreciation of art. We're trying to figure out how we can catalyze the experience, the connection between the layman to the art. Because you realize part of it's also education exposure. And unfortunately in Singapore, you know, we spend so much of our working hours doing non-art related stuff, maybe perhaps non-creative stuff, you know, to earn the bills and pay the house and all that. So we are trying to figure out how to catalyze that experience, because if you look at developed countries, they had to take decades before they reached a stage where they treat the museum like a second living room. For us, it's almost like, I can tell you that most of the Singaporeans here are coming in maybe 3-4 times a year at most per year. So we're trying to figure out how to naturalize that behavior. And there are some clues that were revealed in academia about exposure to kids in museums when they're young, naturalizing the process. But we're trying to figure out if AI and certain systems can synthesize certain information such that it would be somewhat more attractive or more exciting for a citizen to engage with art, right? That's one level. The next level is also, in terms of museum as a political space or as an infrastructure in itself, there are lots of things that a person has to navigate through in order to encounter art. So I can tell you that we're using AI for things like robotics and chatbots in order to help facilitate that interaction between the user and the space being the gallery. So we have robots right now that are guiding people around the art exhibition. And one big lesson that I learned was that physicality is very important. A lot of what we talk about is digital and very invisible. A person comes into the museum, really, you put out QR codes and all that, there's fatigue around that. So no one's scanning, no one's encountering the digital. So all these layers that we create are actually worthless to them because it's too much work. But what we realize is a real kicker is that when we make it a bit more physical, for example, the robot, when we manifest our audio tour, which is our app, onto the robot, people suddenly realize, hey, I didn't know you had this. And that was the bright spark moment to us in that, sure, the robot has AI, the robot has LiDAR systems to do navigation itself and all, and that's sexy. But the most important part that we learned was just being present. And that was a big push to us. So all the AI and all that is just to support the notion of physicality. So that was the other one. The third layer that we're involving AI at the gallery is the work experience. So I talked about art, the visitor experience, and now the work experience. The work experience is where we've deployed AI to help us do scheduling. For example, you would know, all of you doing Zoom and all that today, right? When you have a scheduled meeting with so many people, it's very troublesome to match calendars. We had an AI called Evie. If you look it up, Evie.ai, it's a local startup. They actually can poll everybody for their calendars. They can even read your calendar for you, and it can book a room for you as well. So everything's all sorted. Just, hey, Evie, set up meeting. I want coffee session and all that. Then it gets it done. So we also have a more advanced AI by another local startup called Sale Whale. And what it does is that it does the entire sales process. So for instance, one of the third highest revenue makers for the gallery that I was reading in the annual report was our venue rentals. So I saw that the team was only 5-person strong, and I thought, let's catalyze that. So by having an AI, a virtual agent, join the team, the agent would field all the incoming requests, alleviating the staff of more than 50% of emails that were inquiry. That bot could answer everything, check whether he could match the pricing that was quoted, and if the sales lead is hot, pass the hot lead then to a real person. Imagine all the productivity we've saved. So these are ways in which, as a larger art ecosystem, it can energize at different levels. So yeah, hope that helps.
Kevin, did you have something to say? Oh, no, sorry. Eugene, did you have something to say?
So the AI that I'm using is with Instagram filters. So I think they are rolling out maybe body tracking, and I'm also actually already using body tracking for the nursing homes already. So there's a camera in front, it's detecting whether they are doing this, then or whether they're in the right pose. So that's the kind of AI that I'm using now. In the future, I don't foresee like more artists using AI directly to generate stuff. I think there will definitely be the few of them who will be using it directly, but I think most of the time it will be like me who is using the work of someone else's AI, which is the facial recognition, which is done by Instagram and Facebook, and then the body tracking for my Kinect is done by Microsoft. So I think I would like for more people to pick up coding, like how I have done when I was younger. Then they can be more savvy when they create all this stuff, and hopefully there will be people who actually code their own AI for art next time, rather than just like using a tool that they don't quite understand. I've yet to meet an artist who has coded the AI themselves.
Actually, that's a really nice way to end off this session. So, Lawrence, picking up on that, maybe you could share with us a hope that you have for AI or the industry in the future.
Well, what I hope is, like, what I said earlier, that everyone in Singapore becomes more data savvy. Everyone becomes more AI aware. In fact, we are, it's already available. We have already shared. In AI Singapore, we've come up with this. We call it an AI Readiness Index, where we are able to, one of the things that we do is we engage a lot of the industry players, and it helps my sales team to quickly understand where they are in their AI journey. So we have, the classification is, you are an AI unaware organization, or an AI aware, or an AI novice, or an AI competent organization. Now, it is perfectly fine to be in AI aware and never moving to AI novice or AI competent. What we hope is for most organizations and everyone to go from unaware to aware. When you are in aware, you don't need to code. What we want is for you to start using AI tools like EV.AI, Sales Whale, so that you improve your own productivity, right? You don't need to code at all. And another one is, as you get to know what are these tools, sometimes you don't even need to be digitized in that sense. A lot of people have this misconception that, to do AI means my whole enterprise needs to be digital. I need to convert everything to digital. I need to store in this huge data warehouse. No. You can still use AI when your internal operations remains the same. Something like EV.AI can be used without disrupting your internal organizations. Or a chatbot or a voice-to-text system can be brought into an organization that does not disrupt your internal flow at all. So you can remain exactly as you are today, but you add on additional tools at the peripherals to accelerate your productivity. So there are a lot of ways to use AI today, and it does not mean that you need to be a digital organizations to start using AI. You can be undigital or paper and still use AI. You just need to know where it can be used.
Thank you, Lawrence. And Kevin, would you like to share a hope that you have for the future?
I guess it's just like I started off with the Gartner chart showing how everybody's super elated, high expectations, and then super depressed. I think we just got to realize how humans tend to behave and take advantage of what's out there, right? In a sense of AI that just like what Lawrence is putting out there, it's a hope that perhaps AI could be like a second language to some of us down the road. And I must tell you that don't be scared. I always tell people don't be scared because a lot of the coding that we all talk about, the math, I had to take up advanced stats and all that, you don't really have to anymore because we're arriving at a state of development where it's called the low-code environment or object-oriented, where everything that you need to put together are like Lego bricks that you assemble together, and it's visual. For example, the robot that we're deploying at the gallery, there are new software that's for it that allow people to write their own tours by assembling a series of blocks together visually. So we were thinking of having students actually generate tours at the gallery also, sort of like community-generated tours. So we're approaching that state where it's way more accessible for people to really get their hands dirty with AI. But like what Lauren said, you don't have to use it, but if you use it, you realize that, hey, it could actually save you a lot of time and money and could be quite fun also. Yeah.
Oh yes, the don't be afraid. That's actually the key thing to learning coding actually. Like it would really help. I know you don't have to learn coding, but it would really help if you learn coding. And when I tried teaching some people how to code, they sometimes have this their own mental block, their own block. They see the word coding and then they're like, oh, I can't do it. They just put themselves down straight away. So that is the fear. That is, if you don't have that fear, you like, oh, maybe I'll give it a try, and then more people will start to learn coding. And just now I misspoke. When I was sitting here, I remembered there's a few people who have made their own, coded their own AI stuff and has done art with it. There are people like that. My hope is that there are more people like that in the future from Singapore. So don't be afraid.
Thank you. Actually, that is what I've learned most on this panel, to be not afraid of the possibilities. And also, it's really inspiring, this thing that just keeps learning and isn't held back by its own emotional baggage, as a lot of us humans are very likely to do. And it just keeps growing and learning, and the possibilities that it brings with it are incredible. So thank you so much today for your sharing, and thank you so much for being here and your questions. We hope you enjoyed the session, and if you want to rewatch it or share it with your friends, it'll be online at a later date. And Rupert, over to you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Xuan, and the whole panel. That was really fascinating. So yeah, very much obliged. I do just have to round off with a little bit of housekeeping, given the circumstances we're in. So yeah, before you leave, please be reminded that we need to keep a mindful of safety management measures. So do follow the instructions of the ushers, and they'll guide you out. If you're attending the second session, I'll say again, you do need a ticket for that. So please make sure you re-register for that. If you want to share this panel, then yeah, please do. As Xuan just said, we'll be sharing the video link online, so please pass that around to your friends as well. You can get further updates at civicdistrict.sg. So that's at civicdistrictsg, and that's on Facebook and Instagram. And finally, we hope that you'll be able to spend a little bit of time to answer our post-panel survey, if you don't mind, as you leave the auditorium. We have planted our QR codes for that, so I will do my physical bit and point to the QR codes there. So do register and fill in that survey if you get the chance. That'd be much appreciated. Okay, so thank you all for being here with us this afternoon. And yeah, once again, a very warm thank you to our fantastic panel. So Xuan, Kevin, Eugene, and Lawrence, thank you so much.